Alrighty. Okay, I guess we'll just get the event started here. So hi everyone, on behalf of myself and our incredible panel this evening, I would like to thank all of you for joining us here on this beautiful fine Tuesday evening. We've been looking forward to this event for quite some time, so we're delighted to share this experience with you all tonight. So just a little quick background on us. So my name is Jessie. I am the Community Marketing Lead for Arc'teryx. I'm based out of Calgary. And joining me here tonight is our incredible panel. We have our Alberta Arc'teryx Ambassador Alison Crisctiello, as well as fellow inspirational mountaineers Eva Capozzola and Pascale Marceau. And as well joining us here tonight is our moderator, renowned author and adventurer, Kate Harris. So just a quick little background on this evening's event. So this past May, our Arc'teryx Ambassador, Dr. Alison Crisctiello, who is an ice core scientist and director of the Ice Core Lab based out of the University of Alberta, who's also a high altitude mountaineer and co-founder of Girls on Ice Canada. So her and her team recently summited Mount Logan in order to complete the first of their 2-year incredible journey and project to capture the change of Canada's highest peak. I won't go into too much detail. I will dive into that later this evening. And then furthermore, as well in this past spring, so on April 26th, Pascale and Eva became the first all-woman team to reach the summit of Mount Lucania, which is incredible. They found the remoteness and the difficulty of Canada's third highest peak and allured them to explore towards a very unique objective, which then again they will dive into further detail here with us here tonight. And then joining us here is our moderator. Very, very happy to welcome Kate Harris. So Kate is a writer who's been published in articles such as The Outside, The Walrus, as well as the Georgia Review, and many other publications. Her work draws in some ways on biology and geology that she studied at MIT, as well as the University of North Carolina, as well as her writing kind of on the history and philosophy of science that she studied over in Oxford. Currently, Kate finds her main adventure these days staying home in an off-grid log cabin near the BC, Yukon, and Alaskan border, which sounds very nice at the moment. She is currently in the midst of writing her second book as well. So without further ado, I will pass it over to you, Kate, to start the evening with our panelists.
All right. Awesome, Jessie. Thanks for the intro, and I'm delighted to be here with one of my very oldest friends, Alison Criscitiello, and some new folks I'm so excited to hear more from and get to know, namely Eva and Pascale. Now I think I'll start off, if you'll sort of embarrass my bio is one of the longest here, but you guys actually have the craziest paths to becoming who you are today. And I would love to hear a bit about how unconventional careers led you to climbing or happened alongside climbing. How did you get to where you are today? And maybe Pascale, if you want to kick off. Well, it looks like she's on mute.
Here we are. Here we are.
Awesome.
Okay. Well, hi, everyone. Well, I guess I just did what I knew. So the paths or the models or the people I saw around me was, okay, go to school, get a degree. I got a degree in engineering, and then it was move on, get a house, get a career, and work hard. And that's kind of the path I was on. And I quickly realized that I needed a little bit more meaning in my work. So I actually switched over to a startup. So I dedicated a lot of my life to, we were a company that was trying to be the first in the world to convert garbage to electricity. So I delved right into the renewable energy world. We were probably a little group of 10 people, and that was my baby. So I have no children and spent my entire life on this technology. So in the end, it worked. We were able to produce electricity and to the grid, but for very political reasons, we ultimately went bankrupt. And that's a whole other story for another time. But that was a big shocker for me. It really impacted my life to see something that was just so important for the world, to just be able to just not continue like that was really hard to digest. So I took a big U-turn after that. And I mean, it's rare that you have a break like that in a career. So I headed for the mountains. I went to Alaska, and then I went to Nepal, which led to like gaining more and more skills, and I ended up learning rock climbing in Thailand, and then decided I should know how to kite in case there was some snow kiting expeditions on the horizon. And then it basically came to, where can I learn to ice climb? And that's what landed me in the Canadian Rockies in Canmore, where I am right now. So then in parallel to that, how did I ever even get an interest in climbing? I would say like I didn't come from a very outdoorsy background. Our family didn't climb. We didn't live in the mountains or anything like that. I was just into like the team sports in university and stuff. And that just, it wasn't until I was a young adult that I started, climbing. Well, it started with hiking. It evolved to backpacking. And then it became like overnight weekend warrior type of expeditions. Just, like in the upstate New York and the Adirondacks and in New Hampshire and the White Mountains. So from that, I grew a big love of backcountry skiing. It opened my eyes to mountaineering. And so the skills just progressed, and we started doing, not super technical mountains, but still big mountains, and started exploring Ecuador and Peru, Bolivia. And then that's where the crossroads kind of connect. And so when the career change happened and the mountains were already part of my life, and so was like, adventure and exploration, it made room for a lot bigger projects. And so in the last 5 years, I've been kind of really dedicating to a lot of my time to, the North. So I've learned that I have a huge passion for cold and snow and ice. So a lot of our projects are now into exploratory terrain in the North. And the, just the way life has landed is just incredible, because now I can also continue to do some work from my background in risk. So I consult in high risk industries, which marries itself so perfectly with mountaineering, obviously, because of the high risk. So it's just kind of all coming together and just led to this. I just feel so fortunate for being able to live and work in domain that really is just, I'm just very passionate about.
Yeah. Well, fascinating. I mean, it seems like all of your stories kind of dovetail in different ways. You all have at least some kind of passion for cold and mountains, obviously, but also international travel. And it makes me think of you, Eva, how you came to be doing what you do. I mean, you worked in international development on social justice issues abroad for a ton of years. And I'd love to hear about that and how you ended up on a peak with this gal.
Sure. Yeah, I'm originally from New York. And so I grew up, near the ocean, and we grew up skiing. But it wasn't until in my 20s that I really started to have a deep love for true wilderness and more mountain pursuits. But my background is in cultural anthropology and photography. The photography comes from my father, so I was exposed at a very young age, and I knew for a long time I wanted to be in the world and to be involved in cultures far beyond the one that I was familiar with. So right after university, I spent 8-9 years in South Asia, working on a few different projects in different capacities. And so that spanned from being embedded in a small remote village in Nepal, where I was working with a group of women for food security and women's health. And then that sort of spiraled into child protection work, where I was based out of Kathmandu and working as a country director to facilitate family tracing and reunification for trafficked and displaced children. So during those years, photography photography has always been a thread for me, but because my work was so sensitive, there was a bit of a conflict of interest there. So that did need to kind of go on the side. But living in Nepal and working with those communities, I really developed a deep love and appreciation for communities that existed in these challenging environments, especially subsistence communities. And so for me, you know, in the time that I lived in Nepal, I didn't pursue any objectives in the mountains, but I lived in those mountains. And so I always was so fascinated with just the rhythm of the people and how tied they were to the land. And it wasn't until I came back to the States, for me, I personally decided to step out of international development work. It wasn't sustainable for me, and it was very important for the organization that I was working for and for myself that the role that I was in, once our program was established and stable, for that role to be filled by a Nepali national. That was our ultimate goal. And so when we were able to reach that, I stepped back and came back to the States. And for a while, I was prepared to kind of switch gears and tackle a new international development project. And over a few months, I realized that I didn't think that was my place and not something that I wanted to do for various reasons, and that it was time for me to really go back to my original passion, which was photojournalism and storytelling, and to really then again go deeper into the mountains and be able to integrate what I had been experiencing and learning from Nepal. And I spent the next few years in Alaska, and that was a perfect segue from living in South Asia to being in North America, because there are actually a lot of parallels to the culture in interior Alaska. The simplicity of living, dry cabins, very tight-knit communities. And then that sort of opened the world of Arctic travel, expeditions, really living in true wilderness. And that then just sparked a deep interest in building more technical skills to be able to speak that language of the mountains and to be able to move through that terrain responsibly and safely, in ways where you can just connect more deeply with the wilderness. And so to build those skills, I found a program in Canmore, actually, with Yamnuska Mountain Adventures. It's a 3-month program, and that was truly my springboard. And in more ways than one, it gave me such a base across the board in skills that I was hungry for, and I've been building on them since. But I also met my partner, I've met friends for life, and it enabled me to have exposure to the Canadian Rockies and now Golden, which is our home. So that was truly life-changing. And Pascale and I met through a mutual friend in Canmore, actually. And we met once over coffee and immediately connected. And I think because of just a passion and appreciation and deep respect for cultures in the North, traveling in the North, Arctic travel, and, you know, wanting to pursue goals that weren't necessarily super sexy in terms of ultra technical or classic routes, but really wanting to go to remote places to pursue objectives that haven't been done many times and really embrace that exploratory side. So this was such an opportunity for us to actually do something together. And I think it's the first of many. Yeah.
Well, I definitely want to hear more about your expedition, but I also want to hear from Ali how you got to where you are today. Dr. Ice, basically, is how you knew her. So yeah, from Massachusetts to some of the highest mountains in the world and the poles. How did you do it, Dr. Ice?
Great. It's cool to hear Ava and Pascale, to hear you talk, because there is a lot of similarity. I think, although in some of what you say, it sounds like you sort of you took a turn. And I feel like I have always had two sides of myself that I've slowly been bringing together, and maybe have only just achieved that right now. But those sides are really my very academic side, and then the side of me that just wants to be out in the middle of ice sheets where there's nobody around. But I think in terms of how I got into climbing as well, I have always known since I was little, growing up in Boston, that I really, really loved the cold. I loved snow sports. We skied as a family growing up, and and I have an identical twin sister, which I think I really have always thought has helped with all of this, because we began exploring in New England, the same mountains Pascale was talking about, in the White Mountains and Vermont and New Hampshire, since we were little. So I think I knew it was there, that really, really central love of cold places. Yeah, I guess the way I've started to marry these two sides is, yeah, by bringing my academics together with exploration. So I started as a US climbing ranger. I guess when I was pretty young, the superintendent of Olympic National Park took a chance on me, and that was really my foot in. I would say I learned a huge amount over a few years as a climbing ranger. And I also learned that, as dreamlike as that job seemed and was in a lot of ways, it didn't satiate my more academic need. I wanted to understand these places I was living in that I loved so much. So I went from rangering back to grad school, to Columbia for a master's, and then MIT for a PhD in glaciology. So I have done expeditions all throughout these many, many years of schooling. And I think at this point right now, looking back on it, I've ended up in this really interesting and incredibly niche place where, I can drill ice cores at 20,000 feet, and I can do this weird esoteric work, but I'm very well suited to it. So I guess that's the short answer.
Amazing. Well, I want to hear more about that work. Maybe Ali, you could just continue on. But you've just come back from a pretty groundbreaking climb. I mean, you all have on some of the highest peaks in Canada, and Logan being the highest. We would love to hear what you were up to up there, because it wasn't just climbing.
Yeah, sure. Well, yeah, it was a little daunting going into it, because I've climbed Logan before, and it has its own challenges just as a cold, high place. But this time, the real objective was doing science up on the summit plateau. So I'm going to be drilling an ice core with my team up on the summit plateau next year. And because of the length of the climbing season and the fact that we have to climb Logan to work safely and acclimatize safely, to do the work up there, it has to be done over 2 years. So the work I just came back from is kind of, it was the site selection work for drilling the ice core. So we climbed the route, summited, and were well acclimatized, and then dragged around hundreds of pounds of radar in a grid. I can't imagine what it looked like, but my climbing partner called it a tire pole at altitude, and I'm not sure if she really enjoyed it. And we also installed a weather station, which is a great thing to do to get some longer term local weather records before drilling an ice core. So it's actually North America's highest weather station. It's right on Prospector Russell Call at 18,500 feet. So that's what we were doing.
Just a little casual sciencing.
Just a casual science.
And even Pascale, can you talk us through why, I'm going to pronounce it correctly, Lucania? Why Mount Lucania? 65 kilometers, I think, from Logan or thereabouts, super remote. What drew you to that peak, and how was the expedition?
Well, and the real short and simple answer is it really is because it's the path less traveled. Lucania, it's like you said, it's actually quite close to Logan. It's just north, and it lies in the shadows of the big Logan. So a lot of people simply just don't go there, which was one of the big attractions. There's very little beta on the mountain, and it's the route itself goes through a lot of different terrains. So it's a very long route, which was very appealing again, because you have more of the expedition feel. So you're really committed for a long time. So we basically started on skis, and then the terrain gets a little more technical, and then it got, significantly more technical. So that was a big draw. And then why the ice fields and is I think the Yukon is one of the world's most beautiful places. I mean, it's got just so much ice and so much snow. Being a little fearful of rock, the draw is a lot more, is a lot stronger towards just vast expanses of ice and snow. So, and like, as you well know, Ellie, the climate and the weather in that range can be really brutal. So just figuring out the systems and just learning how to live and be in that terrain for an extended period of time. Those are all the reasons why.
Yeah.
Eva, do you want to add your take on that? I'm sure you probably share a lot of.
Yeah, she really hit it on the head. I think I feel very fortunate because this is a project that Lonnie, Pascale's partner Lonnie and her have been working on for multiple years. So I feel deeply honored to have been able to step in fairly late in the game. So they had already done so much research. They had already attempted it in winter. So they, there's very little information that you can get on the route, but there was a lot of valuable information that they had and just from their own experience in past expeditions. So I feel like I learned so much in the preparation process from them. But then there's that tightrope walk, that beautiful balance between preparation and then presence of actually being out there. And you can go through everything meticulously, which we did, but still inevitably there's going to be unknowns or things that you're not anticipating. So that was also very exciting and a big allure to know that going in, that there were going to be things that we needed to figure out. And I think that we prepared very well. And I think we were really deeply aligned with each other, not only with the practicalities of the logistics of our gear and how we would move through this terrain and how our systems would work, but just our own motivations. And I think that was absolutely critical for us to not only have a successful climb, not saying that success just means that because we summited, but I think it was successful because it was so calm and so we were just so deeply aligned that it felt like we really were in deep harmony with this landscape and with each other. And, it was a big effort, but I think we embraced that so fully that it was as if there was ease in something that was very challenging. And that is something that I think I'll carry with me for a really long time. And it just feels like such a privilege.
Well, that's all the more remarkable because I learned before the official event began that you guys just met once over coffee before this epic sojourn into solitude together.
Yeah. So like Eva said, we knew of each other through a mutual friend in Canmore, but yeah, we just got together for a quick little coffee, and that's where we realized we shared the similar passions for the North and for the culture up there, and just a lot of our values aligned. So we kind of left the coffee saying, hey, we got to do something together someday. Yeah. And then the chips landed the way they did, and we were able to make this happen, which was a big risk. And it was kind of funny because we had to do a quarantine together because when you travel to the territories, there was a 14-day self-isolation. So it was trial by fire right away there. And it was so funny because on day 2 of our isolation, we both kind of like finally let it out, like, whoo, thank God. I was really nervous. I wasn't sure this, so it worked out wonderfully.
That's amazing. Match made in the mountains. And Ali, you climbed Logan with, one of your oldest friends, our mutual friend. So very different situation going into the trip team-wise and team dynamic-wise. But yeah, what were some of the memorable moments? I mean, Rebecca so well, and you were out there with a couple other guys, extremely talented climbers, and what was that like for you? What were some of the memorable moments for you up there?
It's funny. I really enjoyed talking a little bit with Eva and Pascale about this kind of stuff, and my immediate, very head, not heart answer to that question was obviously, well, we actually did all the work up on the highest reaches of Logan in 3 days. So those 3 days, it was, back to back. We got up and over Pierre Col, set up on the summit plateau, did this ridiculous radar survey, pulling all this equipment all over the summit plateau, went to bed late, woke up and summited, came down, went back to Pierre Col, installed a weather station, skied all the way out, So I guess technically that's sort of the most important. Like we got all the work done, got to say hi to the ocean from the top, and but then I've noticed in talking about it a little bit that like always, I think, you know, the people that I'm with are the most important, and the places that comes out are when you struggle. And I would say my big struggle moment on this was descending King Col Icefall, which had almost no snow on it this year and made it much more difficult to ascend and descend. We had gone up and down it for a carry, and then we ascended it again to do all the work up high. And when I got to the point of skiing, basically the last steep pitch, I basically froze. And I just, I really, really was thinking, you are a mom now, what the F are you doing? And it was the first time, it's my first big expedition since having a baby. And it was certainly the first time I had any thoughts like that. And I 100% relied on the strength and insightfulness of my team. We didn't have any conversation. I basically just stopped, and it was clear I was not going to lead. And, you know, it was like, okay, I'll go first. And then, yeah, one of the other pals was like, you ski this face next, I'll go behind you. And I just knew they had me if anything happened. So it was pretty wordless and amazing, which is what happens when you're with the right people, whether you knew them for a day or you've known them for 20 years, like I've known Rebecca. So that's my heart answer.
Wonderful answer. Yeah, that'd be a sobering moment for someone that, yeah, you haven't had to take into consideration this other being before in your exploits. And
yeah, it was the first.
With the right team,
mm-hmm.
You get there. Well, Eva and Pascale, were there any similar sort of freeze moments for either of you, or what was memorable for you on the trip, both good and bad?
Well, yeah, so we had a section, you know, having been there with my partner Lonnie in the winter, we had approached, the route makes you traverse Mount Steele, which is Canada's 5th tallest mountain, before you can get to Lucania. And Steele has this big face, and it was the crux. And, you know, we'd seen it kind of, you know, closer up. And so I knew, and then in our preparation, Eva and I just poured over so much like high res imagery and fat maps and topos. And I mean, we just were like trying to figure out how we were going to get through this technical section and how technical it would be. Yeah. And so it was like, we'd really analyzed it, was really on our minds. And the day we were at the base of this, the beginning of this, you know, section, I could tell we were like a little slower in our putting our, you know, getting ready in the morning. Our little routine was a little slower. It was kind of like we were stalling. We were a bit, because it was actually quite windy. There was no way we were going to just run out there at that time. But like, it was intimidating. It was quite scary. So we actually had a little chat in the tent. And
yeah, so I think that definitely was a turning point for us in terms of really acknowledging our commitment and like really needing to own our commitment, because up until then, the travel had been fairly straightforward. And now this was like a natural transition to where from here on out, like it's the stakes are a little higher, and it just felt different, and you could really feel that. And so I actually want to make a little shout out to someone whose name I saw pop up, which is Ken Wiley. He has a really incredible course it's about risk management and mindfulness in the mountains. And we both have interacted with Ken. I took that course, and he actually reached out to Pascale for feedback on it. And he has a set of cards that are a progression, and it's these different attributes that are very applicable. And one of them is acceptance, and one of them is courage. And, you know, I think for us, a theme that was present and coming up throughout was whatever was happening, to be able to accept it and not in a sense of acquiescence, but to just fully, honestly own it and be able to see it for what it was. And then to have the courage to honestly talk to each other about it. And I think our ability to do that, especially in that moment, for us both to be able to verbalize any doubts, any fears, what were those apprehensions, and to clear it and to be able to just identify it, name it, and then look at each other and really say, really just fully embrace the commitment of, we are doing this. It's not that we're going to try, we're going to do it. We're going to embrace the effort, and it's time to move. Like, we've prepared enough. It's time to move. And we really had each other's backs, and we were able to just do beautiful swing leads and really make a lot of decisions on the fly of just how to protect ourselves the best we could with challenging snow and not a lot of options. We had a combination of pickets and ice screws, and we made it through. And I think there was a very, even more so than the summit, when we got through that steel traverse, absolutely for me, like that was the most cathartic moment and just big emotional release, because it was like, that was the focal point of all of our preparation. It was very challenging. We had a lot of weight with a lot of hazard overhead, above us and below, just serious bergschrunds. And like Ali mentioned, there's a lot of open features, a lot of bergschrunds, a lot of crevasses, big seracs. And so for us to be able to move, just the two of us, it's just us, and to have each other's backs and to go through it on the ascent and the descent, that was pretty tremendous.
Wow. Yeah. So it was similar snow conditions on your end of the
Sounds like it.
Yeah, it was very bare. Like, we had some blue ice patches, and we actually did have to like belay and pitch out some sections for sure.
Wow.
But we got really lucky. Our summit day was like incredible for that area. We did not even have a puff of wind. It was just calm and sunny, and visibility was like endless.
Never before seen.
Yeah, so
Yeah.
seriously, I've been tracking that weather for 3 years, and I've never seen it like that.
Yeah.
So I mean, the summit was really special, but I echo what Eva said, that steel traverse, and we had to get down it, which was all, really weighed on our minds for sure. So for us, we didn't really breathe a sigh of relief till we were well past the traverse, and obviously not until you're at base camp, but when we're off that technical section,
Yeah.
that's when it kind of hit us like, wow, okay, wow, we did this.
Amazing. Well, I know I'm supposed to open up the questions at this point. So if anyone in the audience has questions, just put them in the chat, and I'm happy to relay them. And in the meanwhile, I'm really curious. I mean, it sounds like you've all, whether it's risk management consulting or guiding with photography, and also I was reading about your Dirt Babe collective.
Yeah.
And then Ali, of course, does Girls on Ice. It seems like there's a lot. You're all focused in some way on giving back, on sharing what you've learned about leadership in risky situations, and encouraging others out to experience mountains and the beauty and hardship that is so intertwined in them. Like, yeah, can you talk a bit about maybe the role of mentorship in your life to you getting where you are, and how you're giving it back so clearly in these avenues? But I'd love to hear about them. Maybe Ali, if you want to start.
Oh, yeah. Well, thanks. That's really nice. I know, sort of mentors is a broad term, but I'll use it. Mentors have definitely led me to where I am. I can think of a couple key points where I'm not sure what I would have done at different crossroads. Like, I almost dropped out of my master's program, and then I found the right person who let me direct my own study, basically. And there's just a lot of moments like that where I think if that right person hadn't been there at the right time, I don't know if I would be doing what I do right now. And I'm sure glad I am. So I think that also combined with the fact that I truly am quite privileged. I have very smart parents, and we were given so many opportunities growing up, and that's not to be taken for granted. So I think the combination of all this, as I've gotten a little farther in my career, has made me really, really want to open up opportunities for people where that is not the case. And the short on Girls on Ice Canada is myself and two other Canadian women, Jocelyn Hirose and Eleanor Bash, who are all glaciologists to some degree. Yeah, we all simultaneously saw this real need in Canada for a program that offers like a wilderness scientific expedition that is completely free. So there are no barriers to accessing the program, which is unique in Canada. But also what makes it unique is that, you know, most programs or school in general, they build on your previous achievements. That's how you get into the next thing, right? And this is very much the opposite. We are seeking to serve young female identifying students who have not been given an opportunity before to achieve. So it's not my job, and it is probably the most fulfilling thing that I have done over the last 8 years that we've been working on it. And it's I really, really hope the program expands. It's just been incredible, and we're trying to sort of quantify the impact. We will over a few more years, but it's amazing.
It's the sort of thing, yeah, you probably won't fully know the impact, and there's no way of quantifying it. You know, it'll be over the lifetime of these girls as they grow up, and who knows the impact it'll have. But that's amazing, because it's such a high barrier, you know, the equipment wise, factor wise, to get into climbing is a real challenge.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, I wonder if it's similar for the two of you. If I had to think about the questions I get asked the most, one of them is, you know, how did you start mountaineering? Because mountaineering and high altitude climbing in particular, it just seems like such a huge leap. And there are so many barriers, and one of them is financial for sure, because of all the equipment. So yeah, that's absolutely sort of part of it.
And geographic, you know, if you're born in Sudbury, I think.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Pascale. Yeah. What about you two?
Well, for me, I feel like I was just saying this to my partner actually the other night. I feel like finally, I feel like two of my worlds are starting to merge this year more than ever before, which just really makes my heart so full. And that is, you know, I am not working in a formal capacity with international development at this moment, but you know, some of my most meaningful work was with a group of girls in Nepal and a group of women, and our projects and our programs were very much focused on removing barriers of to access just more opportunities for education and experiences. And that's a very big focus for me in terms of the work that I want to do as a creative and as a photographer, is just be able to tap into more of those stories. And that is my goal in being in the mountains. And so now, two of my friends have founded a young organization called Dirt Babe Collective, and they've brought me in as sort of their principal image creator and storyteller. And so our goal is to remove barriers of access for women, or, you know, people who identify as women, for climbing and mountaineering. And we have a couple of programs lined up this summer, actually, thanks to Arc'teryx Alberta, to work with a group of Indigenous women from the Siksika Nation. And so I'm just so thrilled to start having those opportunities to do that work here, and to be able to merge those worlds, and to be able to bring women who maybe didn't grow up in areas where they had geographical access or the financial ability to buy this equipment. But being in the mountains has been so deeply healing for me personally, and having had worked with young women who experienced a lot of trauma in their lives, it's just something I'm very excited to be able to be a part of. And I think that there's danger in a single story, and so I'm very excited to be able to continue bridging these worlds, and hopefully bringing more stories and captivating still imagery, but also video, to expand that and to share those stories more widely.
Fabulous.
Yeah, and I think, I mean, my answer is a touch of a lot of those things. And Kate, you'll probably the more we can share the story and just have the world see these beautiful places and know that they exist. And I think just allowing people to dream their dreams, like just see you know, what's out there. I think that's really valuable, like getting that beautiful imagery and Kate getting those stories that you get out. And that, I mean, that's what influenced me, the Banff Film Festival, all this beautiful creations, they just lend you to, you know, think big and go for it. And so that's really important for me. And so I'm not working with young people. I actually am trying to, even, you know, if even later in life, that it's never too late. And with my work, like when I work with a lot of really like rough, you know, rough industries, and sometimes they're like, oh, you know, how can I be doing this and like be safe? And there's like, our risk is so crazy, and you can really draw the parallel from mountaineering and really help people really believe that if you know, if you have those conversations, if you do all your preparation, all that stuff, you can have a wonderful mountaineering experience, and or whatever your high risk task is, and just love it.
Yeah. I want to add one more thing, if that's okay. While we were in quarantine, we had several people asking us what the significance was for us of our expedition being only women. And I think the bottom line for us, it can just be summed up in one word, which is, or, you know, two words, which is just representation matters. And I think it helps to just have that visual cue of it's possible. And both of us came to this in our, you know, later years, but I mean, now I feel like so many kids start climbing when they're younger than 10, and so it can almost feel like, oh well, if you are starting in your late 20s or 30s, it's too late even then, and it's just not true. And so I think I really love what Pascale said, and Pascale has been a tremendous inspiration for me, so I'm just so grateful to have her as a mentor as well. But while we were in quarantine in Whitehorse, my friend actually from high school sent me a message, and she saw one of our posts, and her 4-year-old daughter was looking over her shoulder. So she was explaining to her daughter what we were doing and the pictures. And she was like, Mom, can I climb mountains when I grow up? And we just were so delighted. Like, it was just so simple, but just so cool, you know, and wherever that goes, like for us, like that just was very, very sweet.
Absolutely. Well, it just struck me like we hadn't talked about the women dimension, you know, stating the obvious. You're incredible women in the mountains, but it's kind of almost more powerful. Like, you're just talking about the mountains as women. Yeah, that's so much important work right there. We do have some amazing questions from the audience here, so I'll get to those. Let's see. Oh, this is okay. So this, I think anyone could pick this one up. Adam Williams asks, wondering if folks were in communication with First Nations representatives, or if you guys learned any Indigenous knowledge or wisdom surrounding the expedition area that you were in. You were in quarantine in Whitehorse, then very isolated on the mountain, so it's hard to imagine you had a chance to talk to anyone. But yeah, maybe you.
Yeah.
Do you want to go? Or, yeah. So I mean, we have a really pertinent story there. So I've learned a lot from my partner Lonnie, who's spent his whole career in the Arctic. So we've developed a lot of techniques for surviving and living and coming back with 10 fingers and 10 toes. Basically, all founded on Inuit culture and the technologies that they use. So we merge that, you know, we took with us some smoked tan deer mitts with wolverine fur, and that's what we had for like extreme cold. And one of the key pieces, like really never would leave home without it, is a ruff. So we sew a ruff around our hoods. And then Eva has this wonderful story about the ruff.
Yeah. So Hi Adam, by the way, it's nice to see that you're here. We weren't able to connect with the Indigenous community where we were because of COVID restrictions and just the way we were able to move around or lack thereof, and who we could interact with. But as Pascale said, one of the most special pieces of our kit were wolf ruffs that we sewed ourselves. And it was actually from a wolf that friends of mine from Alaska gave me, who are trappers in the Brooks Range. And so for me, it was deeply meaningful to have that piece of connection to my best friend in Alaska and just the years that I spent there. And I think for us to be able to integrate, these really valuable pieces of Indigenous wisdom into an alpine climb and an alpine expedition. And I think it meant a lot to both of us. And we got some interesting comments from folks when we shared that we were going to be using this equipment, and some who were maybe more curious about it and unsure of its efficacy, but then people that we knew from the Yukon or Alaska or had any background in mushing or being in the Arctic were like, right on. It's so cool to see this being utilized in this way, because you just don't often see that merging happen. And it's completely true. Like, the roughs were absolutely critical for us. And it was just really special to have that part of it.
Yeah. Allie, did you want to jump in? There are other
Sure.
questions that are directed at you. So
No, I'll answer this one too, because it's probably one of the most important things as a white person doing research on someone else's land. But I hold a research permit, obviously, to do work in Kluane, and it's wonderful that part of the process of getting that permit means that the First Nations whose land that is have to say okay. And Logan is actually within three First Nation territories: Champagne-Aishak, Kluane First Nation, and White River. So they read the whole research plan and approve or don't. And so I moved forward with with their approval, which is amazing. And we've also been really lucky to develop a plan with the First Nations in the area that we'll have to do next year because of COVID. This year, obviously, we weren't going to go into Burwash or any of the local communities. But the plan next year, I saw a question pop up. It's a 2-year project, so I only have to climb Logan one more time. But next year we will do this. So there's a few different parts of it. One of them's in Burwash. They've invited us, for me and the science team, for an elders lunch, and we'll sort of report back findings to them as well. And similar events in other communities nearby who have, it's really cool, but invited us in, and reporting back is also a big part of it. So we'll return to Whitehorse, probably a full year after the core is back, one more time. But and one other piece, which actually I would love to talk to Ava and Pascale about, is before May. So it'll be sort of mid-April, before we launch again to Logan Base Camp. We were going to offer sort of a skills course in conjunction with UConn for students in their wilderness guide program, like a 3 to 5 day sort of a thing, but actually out in Silver City, where you take off in the helio for the ice field. So we should talk about that. And that's another cool piece of trying to really, really connect with the people whose land we're working on.
Yeah, I'm sure there'll be so much interest in the results of this core you're going to get, because it's going to be.
Yeah. The weather station too, actually, I hadn't thought about how, but I've, it's online. It's updated in real time every 10 minutes. And the range of people who are interested in, weather data up there has been also pretty interesting so far. But yeah.
Okay. See a question, some logistical questions here from Martin LaRue, concerning Lucania. Is late April, early May an ideal time for an ascent? How cold did it get, and how far are you able to go on skis? And maybe that's enough
Yeah,
quick succession, but
yeah, we pulled it up.
Sure.
okay, you got
Yeah.
it.
Well, so that's early for the season. I mean, we were the first team out there. We were probably a couple weeks before the typical mountaineering season for that area. And so it's certainly colder. But we particularly got lucky in the little span that we were there. But it's certainly generally windier in April. And so that's one of the reasons people go a little later. And Ali, you've been there more, so I think precip can be a little higher later. So we were trying, we like the cold, so it was part of the reason we wanted to go earlier rather than later. So, you know, what's the best season? No one's climbed Lucania. We were the first people probably in the last 20 years, so it's hard to answer that. And the weather is quite variable, but we got, I mean, I think we hit our weather window perfectly. So I would recommend that time frame, but it is certainly a little colder. And how cold did it get? Well, as we got higher, halfway through the climb, so after day 12, the weather really changed on us, and we did get more of the typical whiteouts, higher winds, more precip, and it certainly got colder. So for that second half, we were hitting some -25 to -30 straight temps, and sometimes the winds would get us to -40 for sure. And so you can expect -40 to -50 on the summit typically, but we had that odd, irregular, fantastic day. So, and then your last question was how far were we able to get on skis? We were able to ski, it took us 3 days on skis. We covered 20 kilometers. Yep. And then the terrain gets a little too steep to continue on skis, and we continue to pull sleds, but with crampons.
Yeah, so that was kind of the 3 phases of how we traveled. So we basically skied up the Donjet Glacier, so it's 20K, and then we transitioned there. We cached our skis and then continued pulling the sleds, and then we stopped and cached the sleds, and then we just continued with our packs. So those were kind of the three distinct sections. And is the Walsh Glacier still a relatively safe place for a ski plane to land? Do you want to?
Yeah, we were at the very bottom of the upper Donjet and near the Walsh, and there was enough snow cover, even though it was a low snow year, for the safe landing for sure.
Yeah, we did have to, you know, we were prepared. We had additional food and fuel at our base camp in case we needed to wait to be able to fly out. But actually the day we were supposed to fly out, the pilot was able to drop off a team for a Logan climb, and then he was going to pick us up on his way back, and we saw him circle. Their clouds were forming. It was changing very, very quickly, and so we saw him circle in, go into the clouds, come out, go into the clouds, come out, go into the clouds, and then you could just hear it getting fainter and fainter and fainter, and we knew that it wasn't going to happen, and he was able to come back later that day. But you know, that's classic of just, you know, the weather changes so fast, but actually for landing it was really quite good as long as the clouds were clear enough.
You know, the coolest thing about that day, I'm sure you wanted to get out sooner, but I didn't know Ava or Pascale, and I was standing at the landing strip waiting to get on a helio, and they stepped off the plane, and it was just like a real high five moment. Like, I don't know, it felt to me internally like, yes, you just did it. No, I'm gonna go do it. It was a really cool moment. They just got off, we got on, and yeah.
And it was really cool too, because I think we were kind of you know, maybe a bit socially awkward because we're just landing and like on the ground, like seeing people for the first time. So I think we were probably saying more in our heads than we were actually verbalizing, but
You're pretty normal.
And I think for you too, you know, it's like you're focused, like you're about to just set off on this thing. So it really just felt like almost like that nod of like, you got this, and like, go. And
I felt it.
Really cool. It was really, really cool.
Oh man. Well, we're almost out of time here, but there is one more question that is probably a great one to end on. Randy Klein, he's nearing his 30s. That's very young. getting a late start is so daunting. And if any of you would like to share some resources you know of that can help people get into mountaineering, that would be great.
So I'll throw in, I don't know where you live, but I think it's very worthwhile to actually seek out courses, because it's great to climb with friends, but it's really important to learn things correctly. And I do think it's worth like investing in a course, or just learning from somebody that you can really, really trust. I just got so much out of taking a course through Yamanuska Mountain Adventures. So if you're anywhere in Canada and would have the ability to seek them out, I would highly recommend it. I just think it gave me personally a base to where I had enough to get started, and I knew enough to be able to discern what was correct and what wasn't. So I was able to then just keep building in a safe way. And I think, also it's hard because so much of our culture emphasizes comparison, and just really own your pace. Like just move in a way that feels good to you, and take it in your own stride. But yeah, I mean, man, there's just so many good things ahead of you, I think. Yeah.
All right.
That's what I think. Yeah.
Anything else to add, Pascale or Ali, or do you feel like that covers it?
I mean, I'm just going to reiterate, just dare to go for it. Dream it up and just make it happen. As much, like, just don't be afraid.
Yeah.
Just go full in.
Yeah. I see that there's a question about our skis.
Oh yeah.
And can we have a cameo from Lonnie?
I don't know.
I'm gonna
Yes.
yeah.
So the skis are homemade. So Lonnie and I built them.
So
and
quick cameo. This is Lonnie.
Hello, gang.
So they're basically made from yellow birch from our property, and we so the question was how long and did they work well?
So these skis you're talking about, they're solid birch. We call them anti-crevasse skis. So they're they're about 5 inches wide, about 80 inches long, and I use them in my mountaineering for spanning bridges, crevasse bridges and things like that.
So they were really good because, like we said earlier, we're just 2 on a rope. So the anti-crevasse. So to answer your question, Paul, they did work really well. There was a lot of crevasses, and we never busted through anything with our skis. That's not to say when we didn't have the skis on.
Yeah.
So yeah, and they have such a wide base and offer a lot of friction. So you can actually get up some pretty steep stuff with them.
Yeah.
But you can't make a turn.
Yeah, can't make a turn. And the skins were actually screwed on, so we didn't have to deal with, sticking issues with the temperature fluctuations or anything like that. So yeah, they were amazing. So thank you, Lonnie, for sharing those with us. Yeah. Yeah.
Amazing. Well, I think I'm going to turn things over to Jessie now. She's going to do an outro, but it was so awesome to hear your takes on such a diverse range of subjects from all aspects of life and climbing. Yeah, thank you guys. I'll turn it over to Jessie.
Yeah, amazing. Like I reiterate what Kate said, it's been incredibly inspirational and very informative, and I just want to keep hearing all the stories more and more. But yes, I guess like on behalf of myself and the incredible panel and moderator that we have here today, I just want to thank you all for joining us. If you did want to watch this event again or share it with a friend or anything of this sorts, this recording will be available during our Arc'teryx Climbing Academy, which will be from August 23rd to August 29th. And feel free to follow us on our social at arc'teryx.alberta for updates surrounding that, and we'll be more than happy to get the recording out your way. But that pretty much sums up our evening here tonight. And I just want to say thank you all again for joining us. It was great.
Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Great. Thanks everybody. Take care.
Thank you.
Bye.